The Gospel of Mark, chapter 15. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss of darkness, where there seems to be no hope, no escape, and no end to the suffering. You feel the weight of the world pressing down on your shoulders, but in that moment, someone steps in, takes your place, and carries your burden for you. This is the powerful imagery that we encounter in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15. It is the story of Jesus' final hours on earth, filled with betrayal, humiliation, and unimaginable pain, yet also overflowing with love, grace, and redemption. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, isn't just a chapter in the Bible. It's a message that speaks directly to each of our lives, showing us that even in the darkest moments, hope is alive. Let's explore the key moments of this chapter and uncover the deep truths that can transform how we view life, suffering, and love. The betrayal and trial of Jesus. The chapter opens with Jesus being handed over to Pontius Pilate by the chief priests and religious leaders. The accusations against him are baseless, yet the crowd is insistent that he be condemned. Pilate, knowing Jesus is innocent, is torn between his duty to justice and the pressure of the angry mob. In a moment that highlights human weakness, Pilate washes his hands of responsibility, allowing the people to choose between freeing Jesus or Barabbas, a known criminal. Shockingly, the crowd chooses Barabbas. In this moment, we see the injustice of the world clearly displayed. How often have we, like Pilate, faced moments where we must choose between what is right and what is easy? Jesus' silence before his accusers shows us strength that comes from trusting God's greater plan. When we are wrongly judged or mistreated, we can learn from Jesus that defending our honor isn't always necessary. Sometimes, true strength is found in letting go, in trusting that God will make things right in his time. Now, Jesus standing before Pilate without defending himself reminds us that when we face trials or false accusations, we are not alone. Jesus experienced the greatest injustice, yet remained steadfast in his purpose. How often do we feel the pressure to prove ourselves? Jesus teaches us that we can trust God even when others do not understand us. The mocking and torture of Jesus. After the trial, Jesus is handed over to be mocked and beaten. The soldiers drape him with a purple robe, crown him with a ring of thorns, and mockingly hail him as King of the Jews. They spit on him, strike him, and humiliate him, yet Jesus remains silent, enduring the pain and shame. This passage reminds us of the incredible humility of Jesus. He had the power to stop the soldiers, to silence their mockery, yet he chose to endure it all for the sake of love. Sometimes in our own lives, we face situations where we are ridiculed, where people misunderstand or mock us for our beliefs. The lesson here is profound. Humility is not weakness, but strength. True power is found in enduring hardship with grace, knowing that we are fulfilling a greater purpose. And Jesus' humiliation speaks to our own struggles with pride. How often do we want to lash out when others mistreat us? But Jesus teaches us that sometimes the greatest response is one of quiet strength. His willingness to suffer humiliation out of love for humanity shows us that we too can endure hardships for the sake of a greater good. The Crucifixion. Jesus is led to Golgotha, the place of the skull, to be crucified. Now, weak from the beatings, he cannot carry his cross alone, and Simon of Cyrene is forced to help him. When they reach the hill, the soldiers nail Jesus to the cross, and he is lifted up between two thieves. As he hangs there, the crowd and religious leaders continue to mock him, telling him to save himself if he truly is the Son of God. Yet Jesus stays on the cross, fulfilling his mission to bear the weight of humanity's sin. Think about this. The cross is the central symbol of Christianity. It's not just a symbol of suffering, but a symbol of the greatest love ever shown. Jesus could have saved himself, but he chose to stay on the cross for us. How often do we try to escape our own crosses in life, the burdens and sacrifices we are called to bear? Jesus' decision to endure the cross teaches us that sometimes love calls for us to remain in difficult situations, to persevere when it would be easier to give up. The cross represents the ultimate act of love, reminding us that true love often requires sacrifice. And Jesus' decision to stay on the cross, even when mocked, speaks to our own lives. How many times have we wanted to take the easy way out when faced with difficulty? But Jesus shows us that there is a purpose in our pain. Sometimes we are called to endure challenges, not for our own sake, but for the sake of others. His sacrifice reminds us that love often means staying the course, even when it's hard. Jesus' death. As Jesus hangs on the cross, a supernatural darkness covers the land from noon until 3. In his final moments, Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" and then breathes his last. The veil of the temple is torn from top to bottom, symbolizing that the barrier between God and humanity has been broken. A Roman centurion standing nearby declares, "Surely this man was the Son of God." And the death of Jesus is a moment of deep sorrow, but it's also a moment of triumph. Through his death, Jesus tore down the barriers that separated us from God. The tearing of the temple veil symbolizes that we now have direct access to God. No longer do we need intermediaries or sacrifices. Jesus became the ultimate sacrifice for us. In our own moments of feeling abandoned or forsaken, we can look to the cross and know that Jesus understands our pain. And because of his sacrifice, we can have confidence that nothing can separate us from God's love. And in Jesus' cry of abandonment, we hear the echo of our own darkest moments. Yet his death is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new relationship between humanity and God. When we feel distant from God, we can remember that Jesus' sacrifice tore down every barrier. We are never truly alone. The burial of Jesus. After Jesus' death, Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the council, courageously asked Pilate for Jesus' body. He wraps it in a linen cloth and lays it in a tomb, sealing it with a large stone. And although this seems like the end of the story, it's only the beginning. The burial prepares the way for the resurrection, which will come in the next chapter. And the burial of Jesus is a reminder that sometimes things must seem to die before new life can come. In our own lives, there are moments when all seems lost, when our dreams, relationships, or plans feel dead and buried. But as with Jesus, the burial is not the end. It's a preparation for something greater. And when we face these moments, we can trust that God is at work even when we cannot see it. The darkest nights often lead to the brightest mornings. And the burial teaches us about patience and faith. Just as Joseph of Arimathea courageously took care of Jesus' body, we must sometimes take action even when it seems like all hope is gone. God's plan is often hidden in our darkest moments, but resurrection is coming. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, may be a chapter of suffering and death, but it's also a chapter of hope, love, and redemption. Jesus' journey to the cross shows us that there is a purpose in pain, that love is stronger than death, and that sacrifice leads to new life. As we reflect on this powerful story, let's carry its lessons into our own lives. Remember that betrayal, injustice, and suffering are not the end of the story. Jesus' death on the cross shows us that even in our darkest moments, God's love is working to bring out something greater. And when we feel abandoned, humiliated, or burdened, we can look to the cross and know that we are not alone. Jesus has walked the path of suffering before us. His sacrifice gives us the hope and strength to endure. So, as you leave here today, ask yourself, how can I carry the message of the cross in my own life? How can I embrace humility, sacrifice, and love, even in the face of difficulty? And how can I trust that God is at work, even when I cannot see the full picture? The story of the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, is not just about Jesus. It's about all of us. It is an invitation to live with purpose, to love without limits, and to trust that, through Christ, we are never truly alone. Thank you, friends. Thanks for joining me today. Tomorrow we'll discuss the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16. Have a great day.